Welcome to the Results CRM Advanced Training class. This class is designed for advanced users or for system administrators. Today's class will discuss how to import records from Results. We'll discuss how to add users and change their security groups. We'll talk about system configuration, and we'll also talk about some of the more advanced or named searches that you can create within the system. One of the first things you'll do after installing Results is import your existing contacts. If you have purchased the QuickBooks module and are importing contacts from QuickBooks, we recommend that you import your contacts from QuickBooks first before any other source. So to access the QuickBooks module, you'll go into the Tools tab and you can click the QuickBooks synchronization icon. On this screen, you'll notice there are a number of different ways that we can integrate or synchronize with QuickBooks. Before you engage in any of these buttons here, what you need to do is come to this configuration button on the bottom and select configuration. This is the QBI configuration screen. This is where you're going to be mapping the drives between Results and QuickBooks. So you'll basically be telling Results and QuickBooks how to communicate with each other. There's a separate user manual for the QuickBooks integration on the customer care site that you can download, and we'll walk you through each one of these sections of the screen and how to set them up. We also offer a QuickBooks synchronization as a service if you're interested in that as well. In this class, we're not going to be discussing how exactly to set this up, but it should be noted that before you start synchronizing with QuickBooks, you will need to engage each one of these 4 tabs. So the configuration button only needs to be engaged for the first time that you work within this module. After your configuration has been set up, what you would need to do is select which items you would either like to import or export to QuickBooks. So in this case, if you wanted to import and export everything, you can hit select all, and your bidirectional synchronization would take place within all modules that you've selected. You also need to decide whether to do imports before exports or exports before imports, and then click the synchronize all selected items. We do recommend that one person, or depending on the size of your company, maybe one person and a backup individual would be assigned to synchronize QuickBooks on a daily basis. Again, you'll set up your configuration once, and then after that's set up properly, you would just need to click synchronize all selected items. So that's a brief overview of how you would import records from QuickBooks. Another way that you can import records is from your address book in Outlook. This was mostly covered in the basic training class, but I can go over it quickly here as well. So to import records from Outlook, you would need to go into Outlook, and I'm using Outlook 2010 right now, so my Results Quick Add icon is located within the Add-ins tab. But in Outlook 2007 and previous versions of Outlook, the Results Quick Add icon would appear within the Outlook menu. So in order to import contacts here, you can go into your address book, highlight one or several contacts, and then select the Results Quick Add button, and it would import those contacts into your Results database. And the last way that you can import contacts is through an Excel spreadsheet. So if you've used other CRM systems in the past and you've exported those contacts into an Excel spreadsheet, or if you have an Excel spreadsheet with contacts that you'd like to import, you can do that here under the Tools tab, and you can select the Import icon. This is the Data Import screen, and you are allowed to import 2 different types of files, tab delimited and CSV files. Once you select your format, you can identify where that file is stored, and then you would select the fields and start the import. So the user manual will walk you through how to do one of these imports in detail, but just to let you know that this function is here for importing from Excel. Once you've imported from Excel, QuickBooks, or Outlook, you'd probably want to perform a duplicate record check. To search for duplicate records, you can come into the Contacts tab and open up the Contacts DMC. We're going to be looking for duplicate records or potential duplicates. Maybe one of your employees has imported a contact from their Outlook that already existed within QuickBooks, or maybe several individuals imported their Outlook address book into Results, and now there could be potential duplicate records. So to clean your database up before people start using it. In the Contacts DMC, you can come over on the top of this menu here. There'll be an option called Find Duplicates. And then you'll need to select the duplicate criteria, and there's a number of different options. My favorite to use are the phonetic first and last name and the phonetic company name, because it picks up not only exact matches, but things that sound like whatever has been typed in. So right now I'll use the phonetic first and last name option and click OK. So here I have my potential duplicates grouped, and you'll notice in the first name column and the last name column, these are all things that sound like one another. So here are 3 different spellings of Fred and Freddie Murphy. And so the computer has recognized those as potential duplicates. In this case, if you would like to combine these records, you can select the records that you'd want to combine. I put a check mark here in the left-hand column. And then again in the top menu here of the Contacts DMC, one of the options is to combine contacts. So let's say each of those contact records is actually the same person. Here, when I select to combine the contacts, you'll notice that each of the contact records are represented in each one of these columns going from left to right. So you can review these records, where the field names are listed here on the left, and I can scroll down and review all of the information within each one of those records. And then you'd want to select which of these contacts you'd like to preserve. So in this case, if you think that this is the most current information for Freddie Murphy, you can select this middle column. I placed a check here which places a check mark in each one of these fields, and the information to be preserved will turn green. You can also scroll down and pick and choose which information you'd like to keep from each record. So for example, if you know that this is the most current zip code for Freddie Murphy, you can choose to preserve this field instead. And so you'll notice now that this is green, indicating that this is the preserved text. So you can go through each one of these fields and select which information you'd like to keep, and then you would select the Combine Records button. And that will combine information from all 3 of these records into one contact record. And it will also merge any records that you have underneath of that. For example, any invoices, quotes, sales opportunities, etc. will be merged together. You can also use the Find Duplicates function to identify primary contacts and then associate records under those contacts. So in this case, we'll select Find Duplicates, and I'm going to select Search by Phonetic Company Name. And when I do that, you'll note that both of these records have Software USA as your company name. So in this case, we'll want to identify one of these contacts as our primary contact record and one as an associate. Again, you would select both of these because you want to combine these records into one. And so we have Dimitri Smith and George Jackson. So let's just say that we work with Dimitri Smith most often, so we will select him as our primary contact, and then in the case that George Jackson is a separate individual and with separate contact information, and we would like to keep him as an associate of Dimitri, in this first row here, it says keep associate type. So I'd check that yes, we do want to keep George, and then you can type in the associate type that you want to store for George and this record. So in this case, when I select the combined records, it will have 2 different individuals stored. Dimitri would be my primary contact, and then George would be placed as an associate record underneath of Dimitri. After importing records and cleaning up your database by looking for potential duplicates, the next thing you'll want to do is edit the lookup tables. So those can be found under the Setup tab, and this whole area here where it says Maintain Lookup Values is where you can edit the values that will appear in the drop-downs throughout results. So this is where you can do some customization of the product to have it meet the information that you want to track or to match your company culture and the vocabulary that you use within your organization. When I click on Contacts, these are the various fields that you can edit the values that will appear in the drop-downs throughout the product. Here are the various activity things that you can edit: sales and marketing, service and project, and finances. All of the lookup tables do ship with some information in them. What we're suggesting you do here is go through that information and customize it for your organization. So let's take a look under the contacts. When I click on sources, this is the source screen. So on the left-hand side, these are all the current values that my users will see when they click on source on the contact record. So source is meaning, how did your contact find out about you? So if you'd like to add something to this list, you can click the add icon, and let's say you're doing a Google campaign. So in this case, you can add the word Google here to your contact source. You would add a description, and then you can add a source category as well, and click Save. You'll notice on the left here that it's added, and now your users will be able to select that under the source field. Likewise, if you wanted to clean up the list, you can highlight something that you'd want to delete and select the delete icon. In the case that your users have already selected one of these values, when you select the delete icon, you're going to get an error message saying that that value is already in use. So in the case that you would want to get rid of that still from the list, you have two options. You can either replace it with a new value or merge it with an existing value. So let's say later on you're looking through your list and you notice that Google is on here and website, and you're just going to clean this up. You primarily think that the website and Google are working together for your internet marketing campaign, and you'd like to get rid of Google AdWords. So again, you would select delete. In the case that one of your users have already selected that, you would come over here and select the merge icon. Now you can merge this Google value with one of the values that already exist here. So in this case, I would type in website, and now anywhere in your database where it used to say Google, it will now say website. So the same functionality as far as adding records, deleting records, merging or replacing records are available through each one of these drop-downs. So again, we recommend going through each one of the drop-downs and customizing it for your own organization. There are two screens that look a little bit different and have additional functionality that I'd like to go over. One of these is the contact type screen. This is the contact type screen. On the left-hand side are all the various contact types that your users will have access to. And again, on the top you have the add, delete, and then the merge and replace icons. So that type of functionality is still the same, but you'll notice there's a lot more going on the screen here. In addition to just adding a contact type, you also have the ability to activate a process when a contact type is assigned. So for example, if you have set up a new lead process, you could decide to activate the new lead process every time this contact type is assigned, and that's something that one of our other training videos will go over. So anytime someone adds the contact type of lead to the system, the new lead process would automatically be generated. Also, in the basic training class, we discussed user fields and how you can customize the labels for several fields within results. This is where you do that per contact type. So for example, when I click on employee active, these are the various fields that could be set up to track information for the employee. So here are some date fields. You'll notice in parentheses the word date. You might have something like date of hire as a label for one of your custom fields for an employee. Maybe you have review date for another custom label for one of the date fields. You'll notice that T50 and T30, that means they're text 30 fields, or they have 50 field characters available to them. This is a number field, another date field, a checkbox, so you can label them as necessary. The user manual also goes over and points out where each one of these fields correlates to on the contact screen. Another lookup table to point out is the activity types. So again, on the left-hand side, there are several activity types that a user could select from currently. On the top of the screen here, we have the various icons. You still have the add, delete, and the merge and replace functions. For each activity type that you're adding, you're going to be selecting several other options. For example, from this screen, you'll be deciding whether this is an activity type or a service order. You'll also be deciding on fixed times, dates, start times, and duration. So for example, every time somebody currently adds a presentation or selects a presentation as an activity type, it's defaulting to 60 minutes. Whereas if you had something else entered here, like a phone call or an email, maybe the default time would be 15 minutes, depending on, again, your organization and how you want to set things up. You can also have a static assigned to. So for example, if someone in your organization always prepares a certain document and the activity type is to prepare that document, you can always have that assigned to that individual in your organization. All of these things here are set up and can be changed, but are there to save keystrokes for your employees or users as they're using results. Under the Calendar and Billable tab, you have additional options. You can have the option to show this activity in the calendar, to set the alarm, to have it show in the task pad, and then to select a color or default color for your calendar as well. If this activity type is a billable activity, then this is where you're going to select the checkbox of billable and also select your bill to account. So this section is primarily for organizations that bill for their time and are going to be using the mass invoicing module. Next, we'll take a look at setting up and administrating the users for results. In order to access the users maintenance screen, you'll go into the Setup tab and click on the Users icon in the Security group. This is the Users screen, and on the left-hand side I have all of the current and past users for the results system. And you can scroll through the list here using the up or down arrows, and whatever record you have highlighted will display on the right-hand side. So we'll take a closer look at Dimitri's user screen. Here's Dimitri's user screen. The first field we see here is the user ID. This can be anything that you'd want. This is what the user is going to use to log into results, but we often recommend keeping it very similar to what they use to log into their computer so there's less things to remember. The next field is the department, the first and last name of the user, and then the full name. Under Security Group, you'll be determining how much access or which modules this user will be able to access in the system. So here we see Dimitri is currently part of the Management Group. When I click the drop down, there are various other options available to you, and if you're wondering what each of these mean, you can access the user manual by clicking this purple book here with the yellow question mark. This is the user manual, and on the left hand side you can click the user accounts, and the first page here to add a user, there's a chart here that details each one of the user groups, and then going from left to right it lists all of the modules, and you can see if they have full access or view only access to each module. So if Dimitri's in the Management Group, going across here we can see he has full access to every single module except for the Security Maintenance, which is what we're in right now. So he can even edit the lookup tables if he wanted to, but he cannot add or change users. So back to the user's screen. So under login settings, the first thing you have here is allow user to log into the system. This is checked, meaning that Dimitri can log into the system, but this is also where we're counting your license files. So if you ever get an error message saying that there's too many users allowed to log into the system, this is where you're going to come back and want to monitor if any of your past employees have this checked off and don't need access. Or perhaps you might need to order more licenses. The next box, password required for login, that is obviously recommended but not required. And then the third box, prompt user for a new password. This is what you can check if your users are ever locked out of the system or forget their password. When you check this, the next time your user would log in, they would be prompted for a new password, and whatever they enter becomes their new password. Once they're logged in successfully, you can uncheck this box. On the right hand side here, access level settings. These are where you can set additional security rights beyond the security group that you've checked. So for example, include user and lookup list. This is where you can decide whether you want them in the various drop down lists throughout the product. So if you had an admin account, you might not want that user available in the drop downs, but you still would want to log in under that name. Another example of this would be a past employee that you don't want appearing in the lookup list anymore. Restricts user to assign contacts. So here we have Dimitri is allowed to access all of the modules within results, but he's only allowed to see contact records that are assigned to him. You can also override or ignore the private flags that are indicated on each contact record. Allow access to the QBI module. This is where if you want this employee to be synchronizing your QuickBooks data, this is where you can check off that one or maybe two employees that would have access to the QuickBooks integration module. And then if you've purchased the time management portal or results for the web products, this is where you can determine access for those two products as well. Under the email audit tab, you can enter in the username and password for an email session. Also, if you are interested in having notifications sent to your users and having that email pre-filled out, this is where you can enter in their address. So this would be used, for example, on the activities screen, where you would be assigning activities to Dimitri and would want to send him an email notification. That happens automatically, and this is where it's going to pull his email address. On the personal info tab, this is where you can store HR type of information if you want to. Things like date of hire, date of birth, how much they make, social security numbers, sales quotas, etc. And then if you've purchased the timesheet module, this is where you can edit the security rights for that module. So this is where you can determine if this user can see other people's timesheets, if they can edit timesheets, if they can approve timesheets, that type of thing. And then you're also setting up the default activity type for the user. And then the Notes tab is an optional tab where you can keep an unlimited amount of text per this user. So that's an overall summary of the user's screen. If you wanted to add a new user, you would click the Add icon. If you wanted to delete a user from the system, you can click the Delete icon. And this is just like the lookup tables in the fact that we have a Replace and Merge function also available here. Each user can set up configuration options for themselves, so what I'm getting ready to show you here is something that each user can customize for their own personal login. And to do that, you're going to go under Setup and Configuration Options. This is the configuration options screen. A lot of the information here is pretty self-explanatory, but I will walk through some of the most popular configuration options for our users. Going from left to right, you'll see there are a number of tabs that we're going to be walking through. So on the General tab, here are some of your startup options, like if you want to automatically run your to-do list or your contacts, your projects and contracts. You can also choose to automatically display your homepage or your calendar when you log in. On the bottom here, you can choose some various configuration options such as warn of suspicious dates. So if you want a prompt of any time you enter a date like February 31st, then it would warn you that that's not a valid date. It can also prompt you before exiting results. So when you close out a result, if you want that message to ask you if you're sure you want to exit the system, then it can do that for you. You can also choose your default user login. Right now you'll see that this is set to Mary, so when I log in under this computer, that Mary is my default user login. You can also select web searches and your favorite website. This is where you can program that information. So your favorite search URL will correspond with this icon up here at the top, and then your favorite website, which is currently programmed as resultsoftware.com, is going to correlate with this icon here at the top. Under the Contacts tab, this is where you can set various configurations for your contacts. So if you want to have the Assign To field default to whoever's logged into the contact record, you can have that. You can set this up to have various zip code validations, and there's several different choices here. You can also choose which contact screen will be the default contact screen. So there's 3 different contact screens that we have. The Contact Profile shows all tabs available. The Contact Basics screen only shows a certain number of tabs, and then the Contact Notes screen only shows the Notes tab. So depending on how much information you need to access on the contact record on a regular basis, you can choose one of these 3 defaults. And you can always access another view of the contact screen, but this would just be the default when you open up that contact screen. You can also select the default tab to be displayed. So right now it's set to user fields, but if you're interested in seeing your emails most often or your activities, maybe you're working within invoices and you're more interested in seeing that, you can choose the default tab to display once you open that contact screen. Lastly, here you can choose the display name of the contact record. So here we have last name, comma, first name, and then company in parentheses. There's also a company or a last name, comma, first name option available. And so the display name is going to populate the display name field, but also show up on standard reports. Under required fields, you can decide if you'd like the source field and or the territory field as a required field. On the activities tab, each user can determine their default activity type. So right now we have meetings set as the default activity type. So anytime this user is adding an activity, it's defaulting to meeting, and then he or she can change that if necessary. But that's what they find themselves adding to their calendar most often, so it just saves another keystroke to set that up here. You can also choose the activity type for merged letters, and then the default tab when you open up the activity screen. On the bottom here, this is where you can select different options for notifying or allowing to save when there's a conflict in the schedule. On the calendar tab, this is where you can choose what time of day you start. So right now we have this set to 7 a.m. If you come in later, you can select a later time, and that just determines when you're looking at the daily view of your calendar what time it would start start. And then you can also have a default activity type when you're adding a task to your task pad. Under the email tab, one of the most important things here is to make sure if you are using Outlook that this always remains checked. This is I use Outlook as my email client. If you do not have this checked and you're trying to use any sort of Outlook integration, it's not going to work. So that's usually a troubleshooting tool when we run into problems with Outlook integration. We always make sure that this is checked for those users that would like to interface with Outlook at all. You can also choose default activity types when emails are loaded into an activity record or an email is sent. On the Project and Opportunities tab, the first box here is where you're going to be setting up your project and contract codes and then also your sales opportunity codes. So those are the first fields that appear on both the project screen and the sales opportunity screen. There's a key down here and you can pick and choose which information you'd like to set up your codes. So for example, on this project and contract code that's currently here, they have P- and then YYMMDD. And if you look down here, you can see that's the 2-digit year, a 2-digit month, and a 2-digit day, dash, and then it says sequence 3. So that would be a digit counter, so it would be like 001. You should customize the project contract code and also the sales opportunity code to whatever makes most sense for your organization. On the right hand side here, this is where you can set different configuration options for the timesheets, and then on the bottom is where you can set the configuration options including the project type, status, and stage for when you add a new project to the system, or the sales opportunity type, status, and stage for when you add a new sales opportunity to the system. Again, all of the values in this selection can be changed as necessary. On the Finances tab, this is where you can set the header and footer information for your quotes and invoices. This first block is where your company name and your address will appear, and this second block is where you can customize the footer that would appear on all of your quotes and invoices. So right now it says something pretty generic, but you could also add there something more customized to your organization, maybe a tagline or a brief statement of terms and conditions. In this section here, this is where you're going to be setting the subject and then the email message for whenever you decide to email an invoice via results. So when you click the email as PDF button in the invoicing module, this is what would show up as the default subject line and the default message for your email. Likewise, we have quotes email settings, and you can set the subject line and the email message here as well. Lastly, we have defaults for a new contact section, and this is where you can set things like tax rates, credit terms, and credit limits. The DB Connect and the Files tab are more on the technical side, and we don't necessarily go over them in this class, but it is good to note that they are here just in case you need to troubleshoot and you're talking to our support team. This is where the DB Connect and the Files tab are located. Next, we're going to talk about name searches. Name searches are searches that you can design within each module of results. When you're creating a name search, you can have any field available to you within the system, and you can save that search criteria and give it a name so you can come back to it later. Name searches are used several places throughout the product. So for example, if you come into the Reports tab, these are all the various reports available to you, all the various modules. If you click on Contacts and go into the Standard Contact Reports, here is a list of all the standard reports that are available to you. If you ran any one of these reports, it would report on all contacts within the whole database. However, if you select one of the name searches from this top drop down here where it says name searches, you can see there's a lot of subsets of information that have been saved. So for example, you could just pull all client records. And so in this case, when you pulled a phone list, it would only pull a phone list for your clients. Likewise, you could pull other things like all vendor records, clients with a balance due, any type of saved search criteria that you have previously created and then saved would appear here. And so that's available through every module. So in this standard reports for activities, standard reports for quotes and sales orders, whichever module you're creating these named searches in, that's where you'll have access to them. The other place that name searches are available are through each DMC. So I'm going to go into the Contacts DMC right now, In the Contacts DMC, just like any other DMC, you have a standard search and an advanced search tab. When you click on the advanced search tab, you'll see there's a drop down of name searches available to you. So when you click this, you'll see the various name searches that have been saved within this module. So this drop down is where you'll access name searches that have already been created. To display a name search, you would pick a name search from the drop down. So in this case, I can click All Client Records and hit the Apply button, and then your DMC will display the data that you have entered in to the named search field. Now, if you'd like to maintain the name searches, including creating a brand new one or editing an existing report, you can click the Maintain Named Searches button. So this is the named search screen. Since we are in the Contact module, you'll see all of the fields that are available within the Contact screen. So as I expand each one of these, you can see the various fields that are available from the Contact screen. So any one of these you can select to add to your report criteria. On the right-hand side is where we're going to display the fields and then the conditions that appear within our name searches. So I'm going to open up an existing name search to show you what that looks like as an example, and then we'll go ahead and create a name search from scratch. To open a name search that already exists, you would come over here to this Open folder and then select it from the list. The name search I'm going to select is clients within the DC metro area, and then I'll select the OK button. So on the right hand side here, this is the report that has already been built for us. So I'm going to take a look at this in detail. The first thing we'll see here is contact type, and then the next value here is condition is equal to like and see. So when we double click this, we can see more detail of what's going on behind this field. We see the field name is contact type and the condition is like, and they've selected that from a number of different options here, including equal to, less than, greater than, not like, is null, not null, etc. So we'll say like, and then the value is C. And if I click the drop down for value, you can see that a number of different contact types are available here, and so when they say like C, they're referring to this code here in the middle of client. So we have CLNM, CLNR, and CLNQ are all equal to clients' active major accounts, regular accounts, and then we're also picking up the inactive clients as well. So that's the first condition. They're picking up contact types for all clients. The next thing we're going to look at is the state code, and so we see there's 3 different state codes here. We have a state code equal to Virginia, state code equal to DC, and state code equal to Maryland. So that would encompass the Washington, D.C. area. You'll see that there's an or in between each one of these. So it could be Virginia, or it could be DC, or it could be Maryland. You'll also notice that just as in your Algebra 1 days, you're going to group your like conditions. So the state codes here, there's 3 different state codes, are going to be grouped by parentheses. And so you'll see a beginning parenthesis here and an end here. So you'll be entering that by clicking the begin group here, and then on the last condition of the state code, where the state code equals Maryland, they put this mark here by selecting the end group. And so now if we read this again, it'd be contact types are like C, and in addition to that quality, we need to have the state code equal to Virginia, DC, or Maryland. And so once they created this, they hit the save button and gave their name search a name. So now we'll go through the process of creating a name search from scratch. So if you were on the Advanced Search tab, again you would select the Maintain Name Searches button to open up that name search screen. But then to create a name search, you're simply going to look for the fields that you want to include in your name search and double click them to place them on the right hand side. So let's say we want all of our active major accounts for Dimitri. So if I open up this, we can look for a contact type, and I'm double clicking contact type, it appears on the right side. So we'll set our contact type, and then I'm going to double click this contact type, and we'll say equal to, and we want to know again all of Dimitri's active major accounts. So I can select that quality and click OK. It automatically places an and there. Next, we need to choose Dimitri from our users. So that would be in the assign to, and we'll select his user ID. I double click user ID. It appears on the right hand side, and I can double click that again to say equal to, and I can select Dimitri from the list. So in this case, it's going to pull all of Dimitri's active major accounts. If you wanted to take this one step further and put a geographic location around these accounts, you could either identify the territory territory or the zip code. So in this case, let's say we're going to identify a specific zip code or state. If you wanted to identify a zip code, you could select this. If you wanted to identify state, you can double click the state code. So once that's over here, I'll double click the state code on the right hand side and have it equal to a value from this drop down. So I'm going to choose Virginia and click OK. So now we have Dimitri's active major accounts in Virginia. When you're done with the name search, you hit the save icon and you give your name search a name and click OK. When you do that and close out of this screen, you'll notice when you come back into the Advanced Search tab that it should be available to you. So in alphabetical order here, we're scrolling down to Dimitri's active major accounts in Virginia. You would select the Apply button and your data would show up within your DMC. One more thing to keep in mind about name searches. They are available from within each module. So if you're going to want information about your contacts, you will go into the Contacts DMC and build your name search from within that Advanced Search tab. However, if you wanted to know information about activities, you would need to go into the Calendar and Activities tab and open the Manage icon there to build your search within the Advanced Search tab of the Activities module. Same thing with Sales and Marketing, Invoices, etc. Whichever module you need the information from, that's where you should go to build your name search. The last thing we're going to discuss in the advanced training class is the ad hoc reports. Ad hoc reports are very similar to name searches in the fact that you can report on any field within results. To access the ad hoc reports under the Contacts tab, you can click the Ad hoc button. This is the ad hoc report screen. On the right hand side on the bottom, this section is identical to what we just saw on the name search portion. So you have the field name, the condition value, and then the link. What is different here is we have the top portion of the screen where you can identify different column headings. So when you pull a name search, all the data displays within the DMC, and the columns are already predetermined for you based on what's built within that DMC. With the ad hoc report, you can pick and choose which columns you'd want to appear within your report. And so I'll show you an example here of what an ad hoc report looks like. When I click the Open icon and select the query, on the bottom portion of the screen, again, this is the name search portion, we have contact type equal to CLNM, which I know is my active major accounts. We also have contact type equal to CLNR, which if I double click that, I can see that's my clients' active regular accounts. So you're picking up your regular and your active accounts. What's different is on the top portion of the screen, you can select what information or which columns you'd want to appear in your report. So this report is going to report on the display name and then the primary email as well. If you wanted to add something to that, for example, let's say you wanted to add a phone number into your report, you would identify the field on the left-hand side here, let's say it's the office phone, and double click that. And then it appears up on the right-hand side on the top portion of the screen. So now I have 3 columns within my report. To run this query, you're going to select this red exclamation point here, and you can see the tooltip says Run Query. And this is the report I just pulled. These are all my active and major accounts with the 3 columns that I identified. The office phone number, the primary email, and the display name. And then you can print that as necessary. So if you were going to build a brand new ad hoc report, you would click the New button and do that from here, and you'd build it in the same way that we built the other named searches. That concludes the advanced training class. We thank you for your time, and please remember, if you have any questions, please email support@results-software.com, and we'd be happy to answer any how-to, training, or technical questions to help you get started with the product. We wish you the best of luck with using Results. Thank you.